Imagine you're living 10,000 years ago. No cities, no governments, no writing. Just a small group of humans trying not to die. One day you find a clay pot that's been sitting in the sun for a few days. Inside there's some leftover fruit juice that smells weird. Sweet but sharp. Strange. You're thirsty. You drink it anyway. 20 minutes later, something happens that no human has ever felt before. The world gets a little blurry. Your legs feel funny. You're laughing, but you're not sure why. You feel warm, connected to the people sitting around you. You feel for the first time in your life like everything might actually be okay. You just became the first drunk human in history, and what happened next would reshape civilization forever. Let's set the scene properly. We're somewhere between 10,000 and 13,000 years ago. Humans are just beginning to settle down. We've been nomadic for hundreds of thousands of years, following animals, chasing seasons, surviving. Agriculture doesn't exist yet. Writing doesn't exist yet. Money doesn't exist yet. But yeast does. Yeast is one of the oldest living organisms on Earth. It's been here for hundreds of millions of years, doing exactly one thing: eating sugar and turning it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. It does this on fruit that falls from trees. It does this in honey left in caves. It does this anywhere sugar and water meet and sit for a few days. So here's the thing. Alcohol didn't need to be invented. It was already happening, everywhere, all the time. The question was never who invented alcohol. The real question is, who was the first human brave enough or thirsty enough to drink something that smelled that weird? We don't know their name. We don't know exactly when it happened. But based on the archaeological evidence, the first deliberate fermentation, the first time humans made alcohol on purpose, happened at least 13,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. And the place where we have the clearest evidence might surprise you. In 2018, archaeologists made an extraordinary discovery in a cave in what is now northern Israel. At a site called Rakafet Cave, they found stone mortars, grinding tools, that contained residue of fermented grain. Not bread, not porridge, beer. These weren't farmers. These were Natufian hunter-gatherers, a people who lived before agriculture, as we know it even existed, and they were already making beer. 13,000 years ago. But here's where it gets interesting. About 400 miles away, in what is now southeastern Turkey, there's a site called Göbekli Tepe. It's the world's oldest known monumental structure. Massive carved stone pillars, arranged in circles, built by hunter-gatherers at least 11,600 years ago. Before the wheel, before pottery, before almost everything. For years, archaeologists couldn't figure out why hunter-gatherers would stop and build something this massive. It would have required thousands of people working together for years. But why? What brought them there? Recent analysis of large stone vessels found at the site suggests the answer: they were used to ferment grain, massive quantities of it. Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a temple. It was, in part, a brewery. People came from hundreds of miles away, to worship, yes, but also to drink together. Alcohol was the social glue, the thing that made massive cooperation possible, the thing that made building a monument even conceivable. Now here's where things get really interesting, and where historians start to disagree. For most of the 20th century, the story of civilization went like this. Humans learned to farm. Farming created a food surplus. Food surplus allowed people to settle down. Settled people built cities. Cities created civilization. Neat, linear, logical. But that story has a problem. Göbekli Tepe was built before agriculture. The beer at Rakafet Cave was brewed before agriculture. And a growing number of researchers now believe that the relationship between alcohol and farming isn't a coincidence. It's causal, just not in the direction you'd think. The theory goes like this. Humans didn't start farming to make bread. They started farming to make beer. Think about it. Grain is hard to process into bread. You need to grind it, mix it, knead it, bake it. Beer, on the other hand, almost makes itself. You soak grain, let it sprout, add water, and yeast does the rest. And the result isn't just calories. It's a social experience, a ritual, a reason to gather. Settling down, tending fields, storing harvests, that was an enormous amount of work. The payoff for bread alone might not have been worth it, but for a guaranteed reproducible supply of alcohol, that's a completely different calculation. This is called the beer before bread hypothesis. And while it's still debated, the evidence keeps piling up. But let's take a step back. What did alcohol actually do to human society? The answer is almost everything. First, the social dimension. Alcohol lowers inhibitions. It makes people feel connected, generous, trusting. As human settlements grew larger, maintaining social cohesion became a real problem. Alcohol solved it. It was the original social lubricant. There's evidence across dozens of cultures that early alcohol wasn't recreational. It was ritual, sacred. Drinking together was a way of sealing alliances, honoring the dead, marking the seasons. Every major ancient civilization, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, the Inca, had alcohol at the center of its religious and political life. Second, the economic dimension. Alcohol was currency. In ancient Egypt, workers who built the pyramids were partially paid in beer, about 4 to 5 liters per day. This wasn't a perk. It was a wage. Fermented beverages were calorie-dense, safe to drink, unlike water, which could carry disease, and had a known, reliable value. Third, and this is the one most people never consider, alcohol might have been critical to early medicine. Fermentation preserves food and kills pathogens. Ancient peoples used beer and wine to clean wounds, to preserve herbs, to administer medications. The first pharmacies were essentially breweries. Of course, we can't tell this story without acknowledging the other side. Alcohol also brought addiction, violence, and social inequality. Historical records from Mesopotamia, some of the oldest written texts we have, include laws regulating alcohol sales and punishments for drunkenness. The Code of Hammurabi, written around 1754 BCE, dedicates multiple clauses to tavern keepers, particularly women tavern keepers who could face death for diluting beer or allowing criminals to drink on their premises. This tells us something profound. Alcohol was already powerful enough to require legal control. Only the most socially disruptive things get written into law, and yet even with all its consequences, humanity never stopped. Every culture in history that had access to fermentable materials made alcohol. Every single one. That's not coincidence. That's something fundamental about what it means to be human. So the next time you raise a glass, consider what you're participating in. A tradition that predates writing, predates money, predates the wheel. A technology that may have convinced our ancestors to stop wandering and build something permanent. A social ritual that helps strangers trust each other enough to cooperate, to trade, to build cities, to invent civilization. The first person to ever get drunk probably didn't know what they were starting. They just found something that smelled weird, drank it anyway, and accidentally changed the world. That feels very human. If you found this interesting, you know what to do. And if you want to know what other seemingly ordinary things secretly shaped civilization, stick around. There's a lot more where this came from.